All right. So yeah, this is definitely a lot. We definitely did a good job with covering this, so this is good. So there's not really much to talk about with this one now. Just a little bit ago, Scott and I were talking about, before this podcast started, we were talking about the one of the trades before. He kind of gave me a blank look before about it. Um, but this trade definitely we do need to talk about because we definitely were talking about it today. And and it just happened today too, to be quite honest with you, and that was this trade right over here. All right. So if you guys want to talk about bad trades, Panthers fans, you better listen up to this one because I think this one was a definitely a very head scratching one on for not so much the Dolphins but for the Rams. So what do the Dolphins trade the Rams with? Well, they acquired Jalen Ramsey. Okay, that is awesome. They got Jalen Ramsey, which was great for them. Now that's going to lock down their cornerback position, which is something that the Dolphins do need, knowing of how talented their defense really is. But now they can play coverage very well, which is something that Jalen Ramsey does. And he's at least a top 5 to top 10 cornerbacks in this league, which is probably even top 5 is more a bit more accurate in that case. So he got traded to the Dolphins, and now what do the Rams get out of it? Well, the Rams do not have a first round pick for I think at least until either next year or the year after that in 2025. So what do they get for Jalen Ramsey? They get themselves a third round draft pick for this draft season. All right. Obviously, like I said, Jalen Ramsey, great acquirement for the Dolphins. Something that I would say they definitely would have very unlikely to use. I didn't know if they were going to get an elite corner, but they did. And so this is an easy win for the Dolphins to get this. Scott, you have more feelings about it. Talk about it. What do you think?
Alright. So, I mean, when we were talking, James and I were talking actually before we were doing the podcast, and we were going over it. And I was getting a drink before, so I wasn't really, right in front of the screen. But Jalen Ramsey was traded earlier today, and this is what the Rams got out of it: a bag of friggin' chips because they gave him up for literally nothing. And this isn't like some Joe Schmo, like middle of the grade talent. This is Jalen friggin' Ramsey, top 5 corner in the league since day one, since he's drafted. He was the man in Jacksonville, and they traded him away to the Rams because he was like a head case. He was still kind of young, and he was like one of those guys that like wasn't the great in the locker room. And I think the Jags were kind of going through it at that point. That's why they lost out Jalen Ramsey. They lost out on Lenny Fournette. They lost out on a whole lot of guys because the organization and the coaching was like in a transition, and now we're seeing the end of that with Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence, and we just saw before that with Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence. They lost out on all those guys. They had Mika Fitzpatrick, and they traded him away. They traded a lot of great players, and Jalen Ramsey was one of them. But when he went to the Rams, he got the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and then this last year, they couldn't do that much. That wasn't really his fault. They loaded up on like elite talent all over. They won the Super Bowl, and then it just went away. But I mean, Matt Stafford got hurt. Von Miller went to the Bills.
Aaron Donald was out for quite a bit of the season too.
Yeah, Aaron Donald was gone. I was about to say Dominican Sue was on the team, but he was on the Bucks, I think, last 2 years ago, so I don't think he was on the team. There was they were just not in it this year, and I wasn't expecting this at all. I mean, there was rumors that Jalen Ramsey was going to be traded, but not for this. I mean, I think he's going into his 7th year or something like that. He's not super old. I mean, at best, he's 28 or 29, so he's still got a long, or at least 4 or 5 years left of him. And he goes to the Dolphins, and James, I gotta correct you for just a little bit, but the Dolphins just didn't look that great last year. They scored with the best of them. They scored 30, 40, 45 points a game, but they just couldn't beat people with their offense because they would let teams get in it. And I mean, they almost beat the Bills in the first round because the Bills scored more points than them. I mean, they scored 30-some points, and the Bills scored 30-some points. The Bills just happened to score more than them. But there was times in the regular season when they scored a ton of points, but their defense wasn't giving it them. They have what's his name, Xavier Howard as the other cornerback on the side, on the other end of the field, and he's good, but he just can't do it all. You know, when you play in a good division, you play in the AFC against Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and all these other ridiculously good quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, you're going to have a solid defense all around. And this is also a test for the Dolphins. They have Tua, they have Tyreek Hill, they have Jalen Waddle. They got to test these guys now. They want to make them elite, have two elite corners on the end, and then show me how good Tua is with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, because then he can truly test them. Tyreek Hill can, get in Jalen Ramsey's face, and they can go back and forth, or they can try to, one up each other on practice. And, Jalen Waddle can get in there as well. But this will be truly a test of, two elite corners on the defensive end, and then two elite wide receivers on the offensive end, and a quarterback who can really do it. In other news, the Dolphins also picked up Tua's fifth-year option, so he's going to be their man, even with this, he can't, keep his head on his shoulders. They're out there breaking his neck every time they hit him. He's gotten 2 concussions last year. I don't think I'm going to buy back in this year, but I don't know. As far as fantasy football goes, if the man slides, then maybe we'll take a swing on him. And I encourage other people to do it, just because the Dolphins bought into him, and now there's no speculation on them getting, some other quarterback, them trading for Lamar Jackson, because that was a point in like January or something like that. So this is a good move for the Dolphins. As far as the Rams go, it's horrible. I don't like it at all. A 3rd-round pick is literally nothing. It's decent because it's a 3rd-round pick, but can you name 10, 15, 20 guys who are 3rd-round picks who are still in the league right now and, doing great things? I don't know. I can't. I don't know the analytics that great at players off the top of my head. Also with the Rams, like you said, they don't have a draft pick for forever. They don't have a draft pick until 2030. I exaggerate, but that is the world they've lived in. But it's worked out for them the last 2 years. They've been in the Super Bowl. They've been in the playoffs. I think 3 or 4 out of the last 6 years, and they were in the Super Bowl 2 of the last 5 years. So they're right there. They have all the means to be good, in my mind.
They absolutely do. And when you have a guy like Sean McVay, you're gonna be good. Trust me, you're gonna be very good. So yeah, no, I think this Dolphins defense, obviously last year was a bit of a fluky year for them. They weren't really anywhere special as they were the year prior to, under Brian Flores. So that definitely changed the momentum of the Dolphins, because they switched from a defensive one-dimensional team to an all-pro offense. So getting Jalen Ramsey on that other side getting Jalen Ramsey on that corner position there. Now you got Xavier Howard, like you said, he can't do everything, but now you got a Jalen Ramsey that's going to help you do, some big things and lock down the receiver. So a lot of teams are going to have a harder time being able to get free from corners like Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard. But I think
I really forgot to mention that with Vic Fangio coming in as defense coordinator, it's just going to make them 10 times better. They played with Jalen Ramsey was part of the Rams, I think, when Wade Phillips was the defense coordinator. So he knows how good and to run a Vic Fangio system. So this is just going to help them out tenfold. And we're going to see a way more complete Dolphins team next year.
We are. I think so too. I think picking up that 5th year for Tua is going to be, I mean, I like Tua. I think he's a great kid. He definitely showed that he's a guy that wants to win, but I'm just very concerned for his health. And I think that's where And I think that's really the biggest question mark that I have from the Dolphins. They have all the pieces around them that makes them sound and look good, but I think that quarterback position is what's going to hinder them back the most, in my honest opinion. And that's not to say that Tua was a bad quarterback at all. I never thought he's not my favorite prospect. He's not the first quarterback I would take in my franchise, but the guy does like to win. And you can tell that he is a fighter. Even when he shouldn't really be, like, for example, his 3 concussions he's been in for this year, where he practically was almost paralyzed against Cincinnati, which was a huge scare. And then you're going into two other concussion protocols too. Like, that's not just, it's not a career risk. It's more of your life that's at risk than your
Yeah.
career. And you've got to think about that.
And if he could just like, get on the phone with Lamar Jackson and just find out what he's doing, because he's also a running quarterback. He's not a very big guy. Lamar and Tua are kind of the same size. I think Lamar is a little taller. He's a little faster, obviously. But I mean, Tua has the strength. I mean, for what it is, I'm not a big fan of left-handed quarterbacks. It's just like an anomaly in the NFL. You could probably name on your fingers or on your hand how many good left-handed quarterbacks on them. And Tua is the first one that, like, the only one that I could see in my timeline of watching football. I don't really, because it's not a common thing. It's usually right-handed quarterbacks, left-handed quarterbacks. And they see the field differently, obviously. And I mean, if he could just get the ball out of his hands faster, then maybe that like saves his career. Maybe he's just too prone to holding on to it and then looking for like, the great thing. He has 2 of the fastest wide receivers in the NFL. So he should just, throw it up there and just one of them will grab it. Just go with that philosophy, because that will work. I mean, you have 2 of the fastest guys in the NFL.
100%. And that's what Tua is going to have to learn about when he gets into next season, because he needs to save his career if he's able to. Because I think if a Teddy Bridgewater has to come in, don't get me wrong, I love Teddy Bridgewater. I always liked him. I always liked the way he played quarterback. But last year we didn't get to see him play a lot. But when we did see him play in place of Tua, I didn't think he looked anything impressive. I think he's another guy that kind of needs to retire too. He's not a very big quarterback either, and he's prone to getting injured too. So if I was them, I would probably I mean, obviously I would keep him as a backup because I think he could be a solid backup, but as far as like his starting days, I think are long behind him.
Yeah, Teddy's not a starting quarterback. I think the Vikings missed out on that when they drafted him. Yeah, it was the Vikings. But as far as Tua, I mean, he's got the tools. It's like I said, he just needs like 2-3 seconds max, then throw it out. I mean, I don't care if you're throwing to the outside. Don't take that hit, because it is shown that he can't take the hit, because I mean, he's got these concussions, 3 concussions in 1 year. That's a lot. But I mean, he has the arm strength. I mean, we saw it in college. We saw it last year that he can, he's undefeated when he's healthy. He won every single game he played from start to finish, all 4 quarters last year. So he's definitely got the talent. It's just he needs to stay upright. If he could stay upright, this team could win the Super Bowl probably with him. But we just need to see that full, like, make an elite offensive line. Tell you what, go talk to Jerry Jones and like find out who's good in this next draft and go draft those guys, and do it for like the next 4 or 5 years, and then you'll have that elite line like the Dallas had. The Eagles had an elite line last year. If the Dolphins came that, they would win. It would just be over. It wouldn't matter who they faced. They would just score 35, 40 points every single game, and they would win. It just wouldn't matter.
And this is a team that can compete with the Bills. This is a team that can compete with the Bills. This is a team that can definitely beat up on the Patriots. This is a team that can definitely beat the Jets too, in a way, or can give Jets a run for their money. Like, this team is legit. And they definitely would not, it would not shock me next year if the Bills missed out on winning, which obviously I still think the Bills are going to win. But don't be surprised if them the Dolphins, and we'll talk about the Jets in a bit, if they're all neck and neck within one another for next year.
And they were this past season. They were neck and neck until midway through December, and then it literally came down to, I think the Bills had like 12 or 13, well, they missed out on that one game because of the Bengals game. They missed out on that. But they could have been, a 13-win team at that point. And I think the Dolphins were a 10 or 11-team win team at that point. And then the Jets had like one or two less teams. But midway through the season, you couldn't tell who the winner was going to be because they were all neck and neck.
100%. And I think that's the same result that we're going to be seeing next year for sure. And I think the Dolphins put themselves back on the map now getting Jalen Ramsey. The Rams, however, they still got some work they got to do, but don't be surprised if they do win some games next year. They'll get some of their key players back next year, which is going to help them a lot. Stafford, if Stafford does play next year, which was in all likelihood he is going to,
Yeah, he's got to come back.
Yeah, and he's going to be recovering for quite some time now too. We don't know if he'll be ready to go by week 1 either. So, with all this being said, really too, I mean, the Dolphins just get the better end of the stick.
Yeah, and I just hope the Rams make out on this because Sean McVay, like you said, is a great coach. He was the youngest coach in the league when he first got hired, and then he was like the youngest coach to go to the Super Bowl till this past year with Zach Taylor and Nick Scarpese or Nick, whatever the Eagles coach's name.
Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, Sirianni.
Yeah, no, he's an offensive mind. He's probably one of the most offensive minded next to like Andy Reid.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, like I think he's definitely up there. Like you can make a legitimate argument that he could be better than Andy Reid in terms of offensive mind, but he's definitely up there. And if you have him as your offense, what's that? Yeah, Sean McVay.
Yeah, Sean. I mean, he's done it. He's in his mid-30s, and the guy went to the Super Bowl 2 times in his first 5 years of being a coach. So, like, this whole thing where, like, he's going to step away from football is just ludicrous in my mind because, like, he has his whole career. I could see him being Andy Reid for the Rams or Bill Belichick and just being there for, like, 25, 30 years. I mean, this guy is good. Like, you don't come across these coaches too much in your career because, like, they usually get with their franchise and then stay with them. I mean, it's like the 49ers with Kyle Shanahan. He's a genius. And him and John Lynch are just going to stay there as long as they can ride out how good they are. And we've seen it go through altogether. They've won a lot of games every single year because they're both great GM and great coach. Same thing with Sean McVay. This was his worst year. Every other year was 9+ wins since he's been there.
And he's only missed out on the playoffs twice.
Exactly.
Which says a lot about his coaching resume. So anyway, we'll move on from that one there. But we do definitely want to talk about probably one of the biggest highlights, one of the biggest ones that's going to steal away all the headlines and everything. You Aaron Rodgers fans, listen up. Are we going to see Aaron Rodgers with the Jets this upcoming season? Okay. We know he's visited the Jets at least twice that I know of and what sources have said. A lot of sources I've been reading within the weekend, they all say the same thing. The deal is essentially done. But what does that mean? Like, does this mean that a trade is going to happen between the Packers and the Jets? Are we seeing an Aaron Rodgers pulling at Brett Favre and wanting to go to the same teams that Brett Favre goes to? Are we going to see the Jets actually being like a conversation or overhyped for next year as far as like going in and winning a Super Bowl, which, by the way, I would like to see the Jets actually win another Super Bowl in their franchise. Just saying, not just saying that as a Jersey guy, but, as a football fan too, I think they deserve some recognition. But this is Aaron Rodgers we're talking about, man. We've been talking about this same story for the last 3 to 4, 5 years. He's done with Green Bay. He's done with Green Bay. He's going to Denver. No, he's going with Miami because Tua's not the guy. Nope, he's going to the Jets. Nope, he's going to the Raiders. Oh, wait, nope, he's going back to the Jets. What's the story here? Like, they got to stop playing mind games. Is this a legitimate deal? Like, are we actually going to see an elite quarterback like Aaron Rodgers go to the Jets next year? Out of all the franchises that he was given offers to, the Broncos, the Dolphins was one in a conversation with them, the Raiders. Like, are we going to see him go to a team with Robert Saleh as a defensive minded coach and going back to Nathaniel Hackett, who was his original play caller back in his days in Green Bay? Like, is this something that we are seeing? Like, are we going to see Aaron Rodgers with the Jets? Like, we all have to know the answer to this.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because I thought you would have, like, if we both had like great computer skills or something, or if you had great computer skills on the other end, making like I could see you putting Hackett in the background going like this, and just a big old smile and the devil horns on him, because he's like pulling up all the plans for Aaron Rodgers to come there. Because like you said, this was the story last year. My Denver Broncos got Nathaniel Hackett, and I literally posted on Instagram after it, or not Instagram, Snapchat. I took a picture of it, and I was like, "Are we going to get Rodgers now? Because now Hackett's the coach? Because that's the whole thing. That was the whole thing last year, and we didn't get it. And now here we are on this carousel again. Is Rodgers going to the Jets? Now, I've heard the story literally the last 2 or 3 days. They said, "Oh, the deal is done. It's all but assured, and we're just waiting for the announcement." Well, what are we waiting for? Are we waiting for Christmas? Are we waiting for the next snowfall? Or like, what are we just waiting for Aaron Rodgers to just like have the biggest spotlight? Just wait until free agency is over, and then bam, out of nowhere, he's just like, "I'm going to the Jets." Or is this just like a smoke screen? Because like I would love to see it. If it is a smoke screen, I would love to see it that he's going to the Raiders. They were just like, "Oh, I'm actually having 2 conversations. I'm telling the Jets everything they want to hear, but I'm also giving the big finger to them because screw them and screw what Brett Favre did. I'm going to play with the Raiders and Devontae Adams again because that's my boy.
Like,
Screw Hackett, but I'm going to go play with Devontae Adams again."
like this has to be stopped, because I just don't want to keep having these conversations with people all the time. I talk about this with my buddy Lewis all the time. Like, he is so optimistic in saying that it's a possibility that Rodgers is going to leave Green Bay. Okay, I mean, that could very well be the case that he does leave Green Bay. I personally don't buy it until there's an actual source that says that it's all true, the deal is done, Rodgers is going to the Jets. I cannot believe it until there's an official announcement. Like, I can't listen to these mind games. I can't listen to the egotistic of Aaron Rodgers. And like, listen, I enjoyed watching Aaron Rodgers play for all these years. Like, I've always enjoyed watching him play. But the outside mind of him and everything like that, like the dude isn't even thinking about football anymore. He's on these hallucinogens. I have no idea what he's even thinking at this point in time right now, because he's not there. His mind, his body, like, he's just not with reality right now.
I totally agree, dude. I had this whole vision. I was like, "Yo," I hit up one of my buddies, Jonah, about making a TikTok about Rodgers, and he had this interview about the Darkness Retreat, and he was talking about how he spent this whole time in the Darkness Retreat, and he was doing this with that, and I was like, "Yo, I got it. We're gonna make a stitch of Aaron Rodgers talking about the Darkness Retreat, and then we're gonna combine it with Bane's voice from Dark Knight Rising, and then we're gonna go and put the Raiders blacked out uniform on Rodgers because he was talking about the darkness." And I was like, "Yo, it's gonna be perfect." And then he's gonna become a Raider, and it's just gonna it's gonna be a great sequence. And now here he is with the Jets, and it's just I don't know. I don't know why you would follow Brett Favre, because Brett Favre did the same thing. So it's just like it's kind of ludicrous to me. But I mean, if you want to go to New York and be in the spotlight in New York City, then do that. I mean, it's really Jersey, but try telling that to any Giants or Jets fans. They play in MetLife in freaking wherever that stadium is. I forget where
it's in East Rutherford, so that's the Meadowlands.
It's not even like that close to Jersey. I mean, it is close to New York, but it's still Jersey.
Yeah, obviously, and that could be definitely a whole different argument that we can have one of these days too about it.
Yeah,
but
if he wants to be in the spotlight for the Jets, then go do it. I think it's not a great move. I would have loved to see him go toe to toe with Pat Mahomes every 2 times a year for the next 2 or 3 years, but that's just me.
You know, I would too.
He had that chemistry, so I would have done that. If the roles were reversed and I was Aaron Rodgers, I would just go to the Raiders. Give me Devontae Adams again, and just let me go toe to toe with Pat Mahomes. I'll show you who the best is in the league. It ain't Pat Mahomes. It's freaking A.A.
No, I mean it's just crazy. We just got to know what's going on. We got to know what's going on with this man. Are we seeing this actually happen? Is the Jets a team that he's going to go to? Is this hype going to be like the Broncos next of this coming year? Are we going to see like another Broncos where like everything falls apart because Nathaniel Hackett is there? Like, is this going to fall apart and not work out into their favor? Because think about it, they're going to get at least 1 to 2 years. They're going to get at least 2 to maybe possibly 3 years of Aaron Rodgers, and then they're going to have to look for another quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like we were saying, me and James were talking before, and like, if this does happen, it's the same thing that the Bucs did with Tom Brady. They knew they were going to get him at the end of his career, but the goal is to win the Super Bowl. They were right there. Bruce Arians was saying it. Like, we were right there. He was talking about Jameis Winston. I vividly remember the interview. He was talking about Jameis Winston, and he was like, yeah, we were right there. We just need to nail on the quarterback. This 30 interception things can't happen. And then the next thing you know, Jameis Winston leaves, and then here comes Tom Brady. It's the same scenario 3 years later. Aaron Rodgers goes to a team with Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore, 2 elite wide receivers. We saw how good Wilson was last year. With anybody besides frickin' Zach Wilson, the milk chaser, throwing him the ball, he's good. He was good with frickin' old man Flacco and Mike White. I don't even know where he came from. He wasn't even that good, and then Garrett Wilson makes him look good. And Elijah Moore was just pissed off at the team because Zach Wilson wasn't throwing him the damn ball when he should have. And then you got Breece Hall, who was the best running back prospect last year. He blew out his leg, tore his ACL. And, you know, we all know that might take 2-year process to be good again, but I think he can be, elite next year. If he's healthy, and this happens, then yes, this is going to be another huge, mind-blowing thing that we're going to just love to watch every Sunday, every week.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the Jets are close to being a potential, threat to the NFL. Like, I really do believe that this young talent that they have, that draft last year really got them in the right direction. Like, they drafted everybody last year, and it was excellent. It was probably probably the best draft out of any NFL team that they had last year. Like, they nailed it.
They had 2 offensive award-winning players. They had Sauce Gardner winning Defensive Player of the Year, and they had Garrett Wilson winning Offensive Player of the Year.
And if
it's like never heard of.
And if Breece Hall wasn't injured, he definitely would have gotten He would have gotten recognition too.
He would have gotten Rookie of the Year for all we know.
Like, this team has an all-pro talent, and that's funny to say about the Jets, who's been the laughingstock for the last 50 years after the Joe Namath Super Bowl, the guy that couldn't even walk, winning a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, this has been a laughingstock of a franchise for decades. If Aaron Rodgers goes to the Jets and he makes them a legitimate competitive team and probably go to the Super Bowl to win it, you know how big this is going to be for not only the franchise, but for the fans, MetLife, and the MetLife Stadium, everybody.
New York will erupt.
It's going to erupt, just like with the Giants when they won all 4 when they won the 4 Super Bowls, especially the 2 against Tom Brady. Like, the whole states of New York and New Jersey went absolutely bananas over it. Like, this, and the Jets, I could definitely see them being like a bigger and more explosive kind of a franchise that's, and fans that are going to want to roar and really be behind this team.
Yeah, and maybe that's Rodgers' plan all along. Maybe he wants to go to Jets because he sees that they're right there. Maybe he sees that they have more of a chance of winning right now than the Raiders. They're both AFC teams, so I don't really see that much of a difference. The Raiders still have, they could still have Josh Jacobs coming back, and they still have Devontae Adams, his favorite wide receiver of all time. Maybe it was Jordy Nelson, maybe it was Randall Cobb. I don't really know, but Devontae Adams was great. But as far as having all the pieces, they have all the pieces. So like Sauce Gardner was and probably is the best cornerback in the league in his rookie year. The way he shut down every wide receiver that he ever covered last year. I know quarterbacks didn't throw near him, but the way he shut down every wide receiver was just crazy. It was crazy to watch on defense because how good he was in his rookie season. We saw all the stats in college, but stats are inflated in college because you got the good teams and then you got the horribly bad, no-name Division I colleges. But like, if he pulls this and just he wants to ride off in the sunset like Brady did and like Peyton Manning did, then I get it. But and if the Jets want to do that, then do that. If you gotta like just commit to it. I just want we want to get through the next 2 or 3 days and then just be done with it. Because like, there's got to be something else for us to talk about than just Aaron Rodgers every friggin' week, every year, basically.
Every year, yeah, it's just an every year thing. And I think we're going to see, like, if this is really legitimate, like, this is going to be huge for the franchise. They're going to be in an uproar talking about it for weeks, for months, until the hype is going to be until week 1 of the NFL kickoff season.
Oh, yeah.
That's how crazy this fan base, this state, the coaches, everybody is going to be if this is a legitimate done deal.
Yeah, betting odds will go through the roof. The Jets will go from being like a middle of the pack favorite to being like the top 10 favorite or maybe a top 5 favorite of winning it all.
100%. And like I said already, I think they can definitely compete with the Bills and the Dolphins for next year and the Patriots. So they could definitely compete. And if they get Aaron Rodgers, they definitely can blow the doors off of like an overrated Bills defense, in my opinion. Their defense is good, but I think their defense is definitely going to be overrated going into next year. And then the Dolphins too, like, they can definitely compete with a lot of teams. They definitely can.
Yep.
But it's just funny to really think about the Jets legitimately getting Aaron Rodgers. That would definitely baffle me. But at the same time, it would make me happy for the franchise. Now we just got to see what it's going to resolve in on paper.
Yeah, we got to see it. Actually, we got to see him signing his John Hancock on the thinking line, or else neither of us will believe it because it's literally been like the last 3 years that he could leave the Packers. And like, it was all of a sure thing when they drafted Jordan Love and then he went out and became MVP back-to-back years. And then he signed another deal, I think like a 3-year extension in between those years or something like that. But like, maybe it's just done now. He came back last year, which was shocking, but I don't think he comes back this year. I think it's either he goes to the Raiders or he goes to the Jets, and it's more looking like the Jets right now.
That very well could be the case. It really, really could be.